Thank you very much, colleagues. Can you please be settled? Thank you again for responding to our invite. The member of the Executive Council for Education, Sport, Arts, Culture and Recreation, MEC Maile, will outline the state of education in Gauteng. The MEC is joined by the HOD, Albert Chinese, DDG, Ms. Alison Bankston, the acting CFO, Mr. Ompitleti Mafura, the acting DDG, Makobeti Sekonyane. We also want to welcome all officials who are here present. Let me see. When you're ready, you are.
Good morning. I hope that you as you can see, it's a big number. Not that very important that we provide some of those details. South Africa's basic education system faces interlinked challenges shaped by structural factors rooted in historical inequality, socio-economic pressures, and delivery constraints. The situation is especially pronounced in the Gauteng province, where rapid immigration, uneven access to early learning, weak foundational skills, infrastructure backlogs, safety risks, and resource limitations continue to affect teaching, funding, and learner outcomes. In this media briefing, we will be reflecting on these challenges, providing an overview of how to target opportunities like this. Since the advent of democracy in South Africa, school enrollment has grown significantly. In Gauteng, enrollment across all schools increased from 1,480,287 learners in 1995 to more than 2,835,000 in 2026, reflecting strong population growth driven by urbanization and migration into the province. Overall, learner numbers have grown by more than 100% since 1995. But the budget will make it more than 100%. Enrollment has continued to rise at an average of about 2% per year, adding more than 50,000 learners annually. Over the past 30 years, the Gauteng province has achieved near universal access to education. We have reduced dropout rates across secondary grades, improved and sustained learner performance, especially at grade 12, increased and equalized education spending, and made substantial progress in reducing infrastructure backlog. The improvement is a direct result of investment in the provincial education system in terms of financing and commitment to improve teaching and learning. The national education budget grew from 31.4 billion in 1995-96 to just over 35.5 billion in 2025-2026. Over the same period, Gauteng's education budget increased from 4.5 billion to 70.9 billion in 2026-2027. This represents a 1,475% increase over 31 years. While nominal allocations in the education budget have increased, high inflation in educational materials and food for school nutrition have a direct impact on these increases. Thus, despite being the top spending priority for the democratic government, basic education shares a total of government expenditure has faced pressure, and some infrastructure programs have experienced cabinet approval or rather approved reductions. Provincial education departments have faced immense budgetary strain and are facing shortages in teaching staff due to budget constraints. Gauteng is not unique in this respect. There are 15 education districts in Gauteng, and they are named there. I won't go through them for purposes of time. Combining both public and independent schools, the total number of learners in Gauteng as of 2026 stands at more than 2,808,000. A total of 2,429,000 plus of these learners are in the public education system in the province. This includes both ordinary and learners with special education needs schools. These schools provide tailored education for children with learning difficulties, physical disabilities, or behavioral challenges. The number translates to 86.4% of the total number in the Gauteng basic education system, and it's a slight decrease from more than 2,442,000 learners in 2025. Learners enrolled in education schools, learners enrolled in independent schools amount to a total of 379,727 plus in 2026, which sees a decrease from over 392,000 plus in 2025. Despite this, Gauteng continues to have the most number of independent schools in South Africa, with more than 127,974 of the 392,000 plus learners, or 32.6% being in subsidized independent schools. This statistical demographic overview is critical in understanding the challenges that confront the education system in the Gauteng province. The first of these relates to infrastructure. Gauteng faces a placement challenge driven by in-migration, with annual demand outpacing new school delivery and leaving tens of thousands of learners without confirmed placement at the start of the year. The result is severe overcrowding, often 60 to 70 learners per teacher in township and inner city schools. This reduces instructional quality and straining sanitation and facilities. While the Gauteng Department of Education continues to deliver classrooms and new schools where needed, we have not been able to keep pace with the growth in the learner population. This is compounded by aging infrastructure and, in some cases, inappropriate building materials or temporary prefabricated classrooms since 1996. More than 95% of the capital expenditure budget has been spent in disadvantaged communities. Additionally, by 2014, the province had built sufficient classrooms to eliminate the historic 1995 backlog. However, ongoing in-migration and the stated annual growth of about 2% continue to increase demand. Infrastructure supply has not kept pace with demand. Only 48 schools were built or refurbished between 2015 and 2024. Current budgets for new schools, enrollment-driven demand, and replacement of stolen or damaged items remain insufficient. The 2026 School Readiness Audit identified furniture shortfalls linked to growth and damage. These include 67,855 chairs and 25,990 double desks in primary schools and 111,323 chairs and 98,115 single desks in secondary schools. The department delivered available stock from warehouses, but shortages remained and additional procurement was required. Procurement is currently underway, but funding remains insufficient to eliminate the backlog. Frequent replacement needs and delayed deliveries continue to worsen the situation. As estimated, an estimated 723 schools show signs of overcrowding in some grades or across the whole school, with a documented shortage of about 5,554 classrooms, 3,166 in primary, and 2,388 in secondary schools. Many facilities are in poor conditions, increasing reliance on temporary structures and contributing to unsafe learning environment. Gauteng faces a deficit of at least 200 new schools to stabilize the system. Although the province repeatedly commits to building 10 new schools per year, many projects are behind schedule, increasing reliance on temporary classrooms as a short-term measure. At the core of the issue is resourcing. Education resourcing in Gauteng is under strain due to rapid enrollment growth, infrastructure backlogs, and fiscal constraints. While the allocation has increased to over 68 billion, it remains insufficient relative to demand and inequality across schools. A rising wage bill for educators consumes a large share of the budget, leaving limited funding for learning, materials, maintenance, and new infrastructure. Austerity pressures contributes to cuts that affect posts, scholar transport, school nutrition, school safety, learning and teaching support materials, and targeted interventions. Funding pressures are compounded by inefficiencies and uneven resourcing. Some schools struggle to cover basic operating costs like utilities and staffing, and governance and management weaknesses can reduce the impact of available resources. The second issue pertains to early childhood development, which focuses on children aged between 0 to 4 years, or rather 4.5 years. The ECD function was transferred to the Department of Education since the 1st of April 2022. The ECD sector is privately operated in Gauteng with no public sites. Access to ECD remains unequal, particularly for children from low-income families. The key challenges with ECD centers in Gauteng is that a large number remains unregistered, often operating from informal structures that do not meet municipal health and safety requirements. These unregistered sites cannot access subsidies, but many cannot afford upgrades. While the provincial government has undertaken a mass registration drive of ECD centers, registration is slow and paperwork heavy. Additionally,
Zoning and approvals can take years and require coordination across multiple departments and municipalities. Furthermore, subsidy funding is insufficient to expand coverage in poor communities in line with the demand. Practitioner supply is also constrained, and many ECD practitioners are not formally trained and are paid below minimum wage. The third challenge pertains to quality learner attainment. Learning outcomes remain weak, particularly in illiteracy and numeracy. The PIRLS report reports that about 81% of grade 4 learners in South Africa cannot read for meaning in any language, and broader benchmarks suggest roughly 75% of learners' performance below expected standards. In Gauteng, weak early grade reading comprehension and numeracy creates silent crisis where learners progress without mastering basics, limiting later success and increasing the risk of repetition and dropout, especially in gateway subjects such as mathematics and physical science. Linked to this, in grade 4 to 9, maths and science performance is constrained by shortages of qualified subject teachers and a persistent conceptual gap linked to weak early numeracy, particularly in overcrowded schools. Learners enter senior content without adequate numeracy foundations, contributing to failure and reduced STEM participation. Additionally, overcrowding limits individual support for complex problem solving, widening disparities between schools. Cheers. Based on the 2026 school readiness audit, 871 of Gauteng's 2,111 public ordinary schools reported textbook shortages against the standard of one textbook per subject per learner, while 1,240 schools had achieved universal coverage. Most of the 871 schools placed orders for delivery before the start of the academic year to address gaps, and we are prioritizing the procurement of these learning materials to ensure that the environment is conducive for teaching and learning. Gauteng schools achieved a historic performance in the 2025 National Senior Certificate Examination, recording 89.6% pass rate with a bachelor pass rate of 46%, the highest in the province's history. However, the statistics do not outline the challenge of broader poor performance in grade 12, which is often a symptom of weak foundations laid in primary school years, where critical literacy and numeracy skills were not fully mastered. Schools and teachers don't complete the curriculum and all the complex concepts that is the basis for high bachelor passes. Many learners struggle with English as the medium of instruction, which impacts their ability to comprehend complex exam papers and express themselves clearly in high-stakes assessments. Gauteng also faces a retention crisis, with boys with a 21% dropout rate that disproportionately affects male learners, who made up only 44% of the 2025 matric cohort. Another very serious challenge pertains to teacher quality. Teacher quality in Gauteng is uneven, driven by shortages of qualified educators in key subjects, especially math, science, and technology, overcrowding, and resource constraints. Under-resourced schools face particular difficulty recruiting and retaining skilled teachers, with additional risks from an aging workforce. Gauteng, like the rest of the country, faces a severe shortage of STEM teachers, which is constraining the rollout of technical subjects in schools. Although the department continues to advertise posts requiring relevant teaching qualifications and South African Council for Educators registration, shortages in special teachers in critical technology subjects. There is also strong demand for foundation-phase teachers, especially those proficient in African languages, as well as English teachers across the province. Teachers are the most important school-based factor in education. They drive learning and engagement, shape classroom climate, adapt teaching to learner needs, build critical thinking, and provide mentorship that supports holistic development. The number of department-employed teachers has increased from 46,048 in 1995 to more than 71,209 in 2026, an increase of over 55%. Continued growth and overcrowding requires additional appointments. However, national fiscal consolidation has limited adjustments to the post establishment over the past 5 years. In the short to medium term, about 1,173 posts are required to meet growth with an estimated cost of 606 million. A further 2,333 posts will be needed to universalize grade R. The province will also need to absorb more than 70,000 learners currently in private and community-based ECD centers into the mainstream at an estimated cost of 1.3 billion. The implication of this is that some teachers teach outside their specialized training, particularly in early grades. Large classes often comprising of over 50 learners contributes to burnout and limit individual attention. Absenteeism and limited professional development further reduce instructional effectiveness. The final challenge, which consistently rears its ugly head, pertains to school safety. School safety and learner wellness are increasingly material risks to learning in Gauteng, with incidents of violence near school premises, bullying, substance abuse, and escalating mental health needs. The province applies the National School Safety Framework and partnerships, bullying, online risks, and gender-based violence. However, community crime and gang activity continues to affect schools. Learner wellness is under pressure due to suicide and substance abuse, while the department is expanding learner support agents and social workers. Psychosocial resources remain stretched relative to the scale of nearly 3 million learners. The Gauteng Department of Education has developed and adopted a 5-year strategic plan that outlines our strategic focus and provides framework for measuring performance. The plan not only sets the long-term vision for the education ecosystem in the province, but it also indicates how this will be operationalized over the next 5 years through the accompanying Gauteng Medium-Term Development Plan, which is GMTDP. The GMTDP is a framework aimed at accelerating inclusive growth, job creation, and improved service delivery across the city region. Focused on creating a capable, ethical, and developmental state, the plan prioritizes reindustrialization, infrastructure development, and spatial transformation to bolster Gauteng as South Africa's economic engine. A stronger and modern education system is at the center of these priorities. It is for this reason that the Provincial Education Plan focuses on the integration of technology into the curriculum, promoting critical thinking and problem solving. This will ensure that learning is relevant to the real world and will prepare our learners for future challenges and opportunities, equipping them with the knowledge and skills necessary for success in a rapidly changing world. In support of quality teaching and learning, the department has introduced support strategies to improve all phases of the curriculum. The first is the general education and training, language and mathematics strategy, which incorporates the reading component. The GET strategy locks in the gains made in language and mathematics in the foundation phase, which includes the Read to Lead campaign, library services, the book flood campaign, and the grade 8 and 9 mathematics strategy. Key focus areas of the strategy includes monitoring and supporting the utilization of mathematics and language lesson plans and providing technical support to educators. The second is the Maths, Science and Technology MST strategy, aligns with the National MST strategy and implementation plan. The strategy seeks to improve learner participation and success in MST subjects, teacher demand, supply utilization and support, the provisioning of resources, the establishing of partnerships, and the monitoring, evaluation, qualitative and quantitative research that informs the preceding 4 pillars. The third is the technical high school strategy. The aim of the technical high school strategy is to expand participation by promoting and strengthening technical high school for a changing and modernizing world by offering technical subjects that will guide its activities over the next 5 years to address the skills shortage and unemployment crisis amongst the youth in the country. Our objective is to transform technical schools into centers of excellence that will equip learners with the skills and knowledge to give them the best chance of success in the academic career pathing in technical vocational fields and entrepreneurship. The strategy is also geared towards career advocacy programs, ongoing teacher training, and resourcing schools with modernized equipment that is similar to those used in industry. The fourth is the FET strategy, which is aimed at high and improved learner performance to ensure that it performs above the national average. The strategy's national development plan, goal-driven, and continues to build on innovative teaching methodologies through ICT infrastructural enhancements, digital curriculum and assessment resources by supporting learners to progress, monitoring the delivery of curriculum in underperforming schools, and in establishing systems to ensure the synchronized delivery of curriculum. This intervention program is aimed at supplying adequate and effective electronic and printed resources for learners and teachers by providing teacher training and the holiday and pre-exam camps. The purpose of the intervention is to achieve a grade 12 pass rate of not less than 90% while preparing grade 10 and 11 learners for the interim and final examinations, targeting mathematics, physical sciences, accounting, and English first additional language or home language. In addition, the focus is on achieving a pass rate of at least 50% in respect of progressed learners and high-risk learners. The final support strategy is the reorganization of school strategy with specific focus on schools of specialization. The Gauteng Department of Education has taken a policy decision for learners to have access to a specialized, modern, relevant, dynamic, and responsive curriculum that is an alternative to the traditional academic curriculum. The schools of specialization seeks to nurture the development of top talent in Gauteng across various disciplines, producing the country's future generations of economic and industrial entrepreneurs and leaders. Schools of specialization seeks to address the mismatch between the skills with which learners exit the system and the requirement of industry. There is currently a need for expanded learner opportunities within the system by providing an alternative pipeline to the world of work post-matric. Over the coming months, the Gauteng Department of Education will be engaging various stakeholders to engage on how we can all play our part in ensuring the implementation of the 2025-2030 strategic plan and related programs aimed at improving the education system in the province. Our engagement with stakeholders began last week, where we met with the executive management team of the department and district officials. A meeting with principals and deputy principals across Gauteng schools will be taking place this coming week, and it will be followed by a meeting with school governing bodies. We will also be engaging parents and communities, as well as stakeholders in the private, public, and civil society sectors. We are committed to improving the quality of teaching and learning in Gauteng, but we recognize that as the provincial government, we cannot achieve this on our own. Public-private partnership, as well as collaborations with multilateral institutions, non-government organizations, academic institutions, religious institutions, and other stakeholders will play a key role in this endeavor. We will also be relying on the media to continue its important work of informing and educating the public, while also maintaining its independence and holding us accountable where necessary. I think that was 35 minutes. Not bad, isn't it? Because it's a state of education. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. So we are giving an opportunity for questions and responses by the panel. We will also give one-on-ones after we are done. So we are going to introduce yourself, your name, and the media house you come from. I'll start with number one. Number two, number three, number four, number five. Thank you. In order. May I go, ma'am?
My question pertains to the online admission system. So I've got two. The first one is, will grade R admissions be included in the online system this year? And the second one is, are there any measures being implemented to ensure learners are placed before the start of the school year in 2027? And will the system be opening earlier this year? Thank you so much.
You too, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Tato. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Piman Baloyi from SABC News. MEC, a very Pimani. Piman wa Baloyi, se. Piman wa Baloyi. So I was saying, this statement is quite lengthy and extensive, and it touches on factors. Some fall within the ECD sector, which in some provinces fall within social development. Others fall within your higher education. You spoke at length about FET and incorporating them. But it seems, and it also talks a lot about your interventions for the curriculum, but it seems thin when it comes to infrastructure, ensuring that there's sufficient classrooms for learners. But also, like my colleagues asked, about the biggest problem that this province faces annually, which is placement. Are there plans to ensure that there's sufficient classrooms, but also there's also sufficient teachers to ensure that this growing population in the province, everybody has space to be in a classroom? Thank you so much, sir.
Well, I'm Tato Letsaba, also from SABC News. MEC, I just want to touch on the revamp of the curriculum. The world is changing rapidly every day. Perhaps what are the interventions to ensure that we introduce curriculum that is inclusive, not narrow-minded, and also equipped for the future, to make sure that the future generations, they are maybe 10 years ahead, you know? Thank you. And also, last one. It's the question of security in schools. We saw the incident that happened in Rivoli. Perhaps what are the interventions to ensure that there are securities on the schools to ensure that such issues don't occur? Of course, take into consideration your budget. Thank you.
Thanks, MEC. Yes, MEC, it's Katleo Sohoto from Newsroom Africa. It's also my first question, just in line with the school placements with my colleagues. Year on year, we hear parents really begging the department to consider, when they apply, they prefer specific schools. So as someone who's stepped into this role, are you considering entertaining some of those requests by parents who prefer certain schools than others, or will you carry on with the current school placement process? And just the second one, from a national level, the Basic Education Department has a new draft considering also on curriculum, the revising the history from removing the French Revolution and the civil rights movement in the United States from the curriculum, and having more African narratives within the curriculum. Are you part of those discussions? And I guess from a provincial perspective, your take on that consideration?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Slu Molamudi from Kaya News. MEC, I'm covered on the decolonization of the curriculum. However, I'd like to add on that Rivoli question. During your visit, when you were briefing the media, you put a price tag on the damages that happened at Rivoli. You said about 45 million rand would be needed to fix the school. What plans do you have in terms of accountability to ensure implementation? Because this is a school that has faced a similar situation for about 2 years in a row. And my other question is the department looking at exploring other digital ways of registration? Because like Katlego said, parents have just been complaining about the registration system, going as far as saying scrap it
we'll find our own schools. My final question to you, MEC, is why do we still have so much emphasis on STEM subjects? Is it an intentional thing, or are there plans to focus on other subjects as well? Thank you.
Let me thank you for your questions. My colleagues will come and answer some of the questions. Christy, good morning. Yeah, and thanks for the question. Online registration and whether there will be alternative digital. I think we will be announcing our plans in terms of when online registration will happen. And certainly, we will be discussing and looking at how can we minimize the challenges that parents are facing. You know, the reason why I decided that we need to give the state of education so that everyone can have an appreciation. And I think we need to go back to this state of education so that we have an appreciation. There's more than 1 million kids into the system. There's 50,000 kids every year who come to Gauteng and they are looking for opportunities. There's at least 230,000 families that come here. And the resources are not increasing at that rapid pace. But what the department has been able to do with the limited resources is to ensure that every learner is placed, even sometimes at the risk of compromising quality. Because the department has remained committed and remains committed to ensuring that all learners get quality education in the province. So we are in a digital age. So I don't think we should entertain discussions that says scrap the online. We must say, how do we improve it and make it efficient? What are the problems? And I get a sense that some of the problems, it's the placement of the learners. I want my kid to be at Bryanston because I stay next to Bryanston or because I like Bryanston. There are different reasons and all that. Unfortunately, we are in a population of 16 million people. About 2.8 plus million of them are in the system. And we are not going to be able to satisfy everyone. But you have to make efforts as the government to create a conducive environment to also ensure that your systems are efficient. So there is no excuse for the inefficiencies of the system. There can be. And that's one of the issues we will look at. What are the weaknesses? What makes it inefficient and all that? Just last week, it's one of the issues I was briefed about. That's why some of the media houses were requesting for one-on-ones and all that. I said, but how do I speak to you without talking to the people who are running education? I'm not running education. These are the people who are running education. Some of them are sitting here. So I must understand from them, what are these challenges? How are you dealing with them? And then advise each other with them. Because the system is big. It's complicated. It can't be run by an individual. So we shouldn't think that there's some messiah who has come to solve all education problems. That will create problems. That's why we must understand the system and how it works and what are the challenges. So this online, it's a challenge which we will have to deal with. We will perfect, and this has been introduced a few years back, And I want to believe that every year it gets better, and we will work on this. Yes, we want to place learners early, and that's why we also want parents to apply early. So if you apply in January, on the day of school opening, you are not going to be placed on that day, because we need to check. The system, remember, it's big. I spoke of overcrowding. So if you come to Bryanston as a parent on the 15th of January and say, here's my child, they are not going to place the child immediately, because they must still check or talk to the district. So the placement of learners is not only about the inefficiencies of the department. It is a plethora of issues, resources amongst them, because you don't have enough schools and all that, but you also have parents, for a number of reasons. Sometimes some parents don't plan to bring their kids late because of issues beyond their control. They are forced. You find that sometimes the parents were here, the child is in the different province, the guardian passes on or something. So there's reasons, and that's why the department will always make provision and cater even for those who come late. But we want to urge parents. We want to urge parents. When we open the registration, especially for grade 1 and grade 8, it was asked if we will do it early. And in your submission that I saw, there was it was about June, isn't it? You're talking about July. So July is not early, according to, we'll see. But we'll talk about that. But we will definitely make it early. But I'll ask the DDGs to also talk about this issue. Member Louis, Abshen, when Milaba infrastructure, you say, if you read the statement, I do make a reflection about a shortage of 200 schools. So you don't need 6 paragraphs to understand the magnitude. 200 schools. If you take a school at least 1,000 plus learners and times 200, you understand how big it is, and then the teachers and all that. That is big. It's there in the statement. We need 200 schools, and that we need more than 35 billion rands to be able to do that. We have given you, and I think it was deliberate, how many desks we need, how many chairs we need. That's how detailed the statement is. So it's not necessarily thin on infrastructure. If you look at that paragraph that talks about how many, what challenges we have, it is there. And it's big. We're not, I just need the word now. There's a scheme. We're not taking for granted, if that's what you mean. And I understand as a parent, you are now speaking as a parent, not as a journalist. A parent who's affected. So that's what happens now. You have this opportunity now as a parent to say, but you guys, you are playing. Our kids don't have, but we will. One of the things I was thinking about, which we will do, it's a workshop on infrastructure, public school infrastructure, with the private sector and all that, because we also want to mobilize private sector in a big way. I was MEC responsible for finance and economic development. Last week we hosted an investment conference where we raised about 205 billion in pledges. The other year it was 312 and all that. But why I'm talking about the investment conference, in the investment conference there was a pledge that was made by the CEO of Telkom. that Telkom has got broadband infrastructure that cuts across more than 400 schools. I'm raising this because there's a lot of people in the private sector who wants to come and work with us. And our approach is that don't give schools money, don't give associations money, don't give the department money, invest in all those things. You take school sports, for instance. We will come to you. We want to have the issue of, I spoke of learner wellness in the statement. It's very important, not just the safety. So learners must be safe in school, but they must be also healthy and all that. So the issue of infrastructure, we're also going to use the partnerships. But we'll also come back to you because we want to have a different implementation model. Because the current implementation model limits us because of the resources that we have. So we will, Mabaloy, deal with the issue. And I share the frustration. I share the frustration. I mean, I'm told there's a school in Alex Bovey, overcrowded. And that school is the only school in the area that caters for Venda, Shangan, and it's the only school. So it's overcrowded. What must the department do? Something has to be done. Something has to be done. It's an issue that's been brought to my attention. And I know there's a lot in terms of the infrastructure. Sanitation, the toilets, state of the toilets in those schools, some of them, it's not good at all. So we are aware of this. And I think it has answered both your questions, including about sufficient. So I can tell you now that you're definitely going to have a shortage of classrooms in January. As to how many, we don't know now, because some of the, we can have estimates, but you won't have exact numbers because some of the kids will come on the day of. So I don't want you to say, give us an assurance there won't be classroom, there will be sufficient. No, there will be a shortage. There's always a shortage because our system is evolving. People are coming in and out every day. Unfortunately, or fortunately, those who are coming in are more than, in many instances, those who are going out. Tato, I think your question is very important. Inclusive and the content that the curriculum must contain. I will ask our DDG responsible to deal with that. But curriculum evolves. And curriculum must adapt to the conditions. Because we don't live in circumstances of our own making. So we have to adapt to those circumstances. You have to understand those circumstances. And you will know the First Minister of Education, Dr. Bengu, and may his soul rest in peace. At some point he was talking about curriculum 2000, curriculum this and this. And maybe the previous, some of this curriculum upgrades and developments might not have had, names 2000 or this and that, or 2005 and all that, or they might not be have been as popular. Because one of the things that we want to do, we need to make education a societal problem. We need to make education popular. Whenever we talk about education issues, and that's why we must thank you for coming on a Sunday. And I know maybe it also adds on overtime. If there's no overtime, I'm going to call your editors and fight for you. But I'm saying we need to make education fashionable. Everybody, you see the way people speak about pirates and chiefs when they play. We need to get people to talk about education like that in our schools. And that's why one of the issues we have to deal with is how, and I've not spoken about this, how the introduction of money in schools has created problems.
We must talk about that. The introduction of money. There's projects in schools. There's now construction mafias in schools. Those things must be taken out of the schools. But you can't take them out if you don't know how you're going to deal with them. So that criminal activities must be taken out of the schools. And I know these are things that some people will not like. But we have to do them. So education has to be made a societal issue, including the issue of security in schools. You know, I said to the colleagues at Rivali that I don't have a budget for putting security guards in schools, because my budget should be adding teachers. I need 370 teachers extra. So where are we going to get money when we don't have enough to hire? Because schools must be centers of learning. And that's why I'm saying we must make education a societal issue, so that schools must become sacred places. So people must know you can't commit a crime in school. But also the safety of learners and teachers, like the safety of society, is the safety of the South African police services and the South African National Defence Force. So we are going to engage with the law enforcement agencies. In the context of Gauteng, we've got peace officers, about 9,000 of them. We want accountability on their part to make sure that they are all going to be, deployed, especially high-risk schools. There has to be physical presence of these peace officers. And I know some of the people want me to hire security companies in schools. No, we're not going to do that. That we are not going to do. The money we have must go into schools, teachers, getting teachers, fixing classrooms, getting kids food, getting kids to school through the transport, getting kids equipment for sports. We are not going to take money and do things that have nothing to do with education. Not that security is not important. It is very important, and that's why one of the issues this week, I'll be addressing that issue with the Department of Community Safety, the deployment of these peace officers, and how are we going to put systems. So one of the teams that I will be talking to is the school safety team in the middle of this, because it's an urgent issue. So we will deal with that issue. Katlego, yeah, you're right. Parents have preferences, and we want to help them. But let me give you a scenario. Let's say here at Bryanston, the capacity of the school is 1,200. And after accepting the preferences and the wishes of all the parents, you now have 1,600 learners here in this school. And you still have 500 other parents who want their kids to be here. What do you do? And then that's a question I would like parents to answer. And we are going to, you see, one of the things we have to do, this online thing perhaps is a problem. It must not be a secret. People should be able to see that this school, there should be a dashboard that is accessible to the public. This school takes 2,000 learners, there's 3,000. Then you must tell us if you still want us to take you there. I mean, and how are you going to get it? So maybe the issue of being more transparent, because sometimes parents might think these guys are funny. You don't want my child to come to Bryanston. No, we want every child to be placed in classroom. That's what we want. And we want every child to be placed next to where they live. And we want every child to be in a school that of their preference, in a school that they love, they enjoy, and in a school where there's no bullying. We want that. That's why we must make sure that the learning conditions are conducive in school. So one of the things we just need to do is to be more transparent on so we add the element of, so people can see without necessarily changing. As you apply, you must see that it's hotels. So that it's not us who tell you that it's full, because maybe the believability of the department, it's a problem. I don't know. When we tell you that it's full, then you have a problem. You know, this issue, it's a big issue. On Friday, I had a meeting with, in my other capacity now, sports, with the chairman of the PSL. And we're talking about the derby and the dangers that are involved with people going in just into the vicinity there. The stadium takes about 90,000 people, but you end up with more than 30,000 people in the precinct. So I'm talking about people inside, and then there's people outside. So how do we deal with those issues? So those who are in sports, it's one of the issues we'll be dealing with. So the issue of overcrowding is not only in education, it's also in sports. We're dealing with it as well there. The curriculum draft, Katlego, we will definitely participate in that. And I think our team, curriculum team, it's definitely part of that. And including what will be the final content of it. Definitely we would not want our kids to be taught things that are not going to help us as a nation and also help them. So there's a concept of decolonizing and all that. What is important is the content. What does it mean to decolonize? And we will have to deal with that. SLU. There will be accountability on whatever resources that will be made available. In fact, there was some indication that there might be some donation. I've not spoken about it from private sector on that school. But we don't want that school to burn again. And we don't want any school to burn. And that's what on the school safety team will be talking about. On the STEM issues, I think the DGG will talk about it, but we are focusing on all subjects. That's why when you read the statement, that's where I spoke of home language, I spoke of accounting and all that. And the emphasis based on the situation we find ourselves in will always be on those, but we are not neglecting others. Yeah, I'm talking a lot now. So let me give, which DGGs, HOD, are you starting? Maybe you must sit here so that they can hear you.
I think it should be fine. Mics. You want mics?
We will move.
Anonymous.
Yeah. So you know what they want to do, in case you contradict me, you want to quote you properly.
The HOD doesn't know what to say. Good morning. My name is Albert. Surname is Chaney. Chanee. I'm the acting head of department. I am substantively the DDG for planning. I want to deal with the issue about some background to the issue of the admissions system. And I think as we move along, MEC, I think we need to have a preparatory workshop with the colleagues here from the press on how the system actually works, just before we launch it, so it's well understood. The issue of feeder zones that we implement in Gauteng is a constitutional court order. It is not a decision that the department had taken. It's a provision in the South African Schools Act, but it was a constitutional court order that we implement feeder zones to deal with a number of problems. And the one that comes up very clearly is the issue of administrative justice. Now, if we say it's a school of choice approach, and there is 2,000 applications, on what basis do you make the choice? Who gets in, who doesn't get in? And the minute you get one of the learners placed, there is a basis for a grievance that may become legal. And you would have to prove that there is a substantive basis in which you had applied your mind and placed the learner. And so the feeder zones required us to demarcate a geographic area that would service a school as a feeder zone. That means learners would come into that school from that specific areas. And the way that we wrote the regulations was as follows. If all the applicants from this feeder zone have been placed and there is still space left, then somebody else can get in. And so we've given that particular option. But we want to also control certain negative things that are appearing in the environment. And the biggest challenge we have moving into next year is a growing problem of fraudulent addresses. There are people who are selling addresses even though they don't live there. There are people who are renting back rooms for a month just to get the address. And the consequence of that is that children are busing. And I think if you've just looked at the number of incidents of private busing by parents to schools in the last few months, I don't think it's what children should be subjected to. But let me give you the bigger problem. Most of the children who are being bused get up at 4:35 in the morning. By the time they get to school, they are tired and exhausted. They cannot participate effectively in the learning program. Then they've got to get home again. And these scholar transport providers, the private ones, they've got a time. These children don't participate in extracurricular activities. They don't participate in co-curricular activities. And so there is a bigger problem to this issue of school of choice. But I think, especially when it comes to high schools where we've got the biggest problem, is that if you just look at our matric data, most of the township secondary schools are competitive at the matric level. I know there's one case that we've been speaking about recently. There's a school called Lebogang. Lebogang had a 100% pass rate and a 94.4% bachelor rate. The best school in the province had a 100% pass rate and a 94.5% bachelor rate. So sometimes when we look at how do parents make choices, it's perceptual and not based on the educational capacity of a school. And so we want to just focus on those things that in the long term we want to make sure, as the MEC said, the local school is what was envisaged in the South African Schools Act. And there are many consequences. Parents who bus their children to a school that's remote from where they live don't participate in the school as parents. They are not active in the SGB. And then the local schools are getting hijacked with SGB members who see lucrative opportunities. And so we need good parents to stay with the local school and also contribute in that regard. So in the system, we have got layers of information, and I think as we get closer to the launch date, I think we will take all of you through that particular system so it is well understood. I think the point that the MEC raised about transparency and a dashboard is clear. We load, before people apply, we load the capacity of the school. We already know before the system opens how many spaces are available. And I think to some extent we will deal with those particular aspects. I think the second point, very quickly, is the issue of just being cautious between is the technical system working right versus is the placement criteria that is in law working correctly. And the system hasn't collapsed. We actually went to court last year. Early last year, we were taken to court where we were told the system doesn't work. In actual fact, the court ruled in our favor to say it is one of the most sophisticated backends in the placement system. If you look at another province's online system, I won't mention the province, it is a data collection system. All it does is it says, lodge your application, give us your documents. The decision is still made at the school. And now there are reports of racism in that province, that the criteria used by that province is disadvantaging black learners. Whereas in our case, we don't have that because it's transparent, at least at the level of the criteria. But unlike the other province, it hasn't really worked. Let me hand over to the DDG through the MEC around this.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, MEC and Acting HOD. My name is Alison Bengson, B-E-N-G-T-S-O-N. So not Ston, Bengson. The T is silent, yes. Let me respond to the question on the revamping of the curriculum. The Department of Basic Education has implemented what is called a three-stream model. You would know that for many years, our education system focused on the academic stream. And a few years ago, the DBE then introduced the three-stream model, which has got the academic stream, the vocational stream, and the occupational stream. And we are implementing that. So in the academic, it's what you know already. But in terms of the vocational, it's through our technical high schools. And currently in our province, there's a lot of resources, a lot of support that we're providing. I think the MEC spoke about our technical high school strategy. We currently have 113 schools that offer technical subjects, of which 11 are full technical high schools. But what we also introduced, again through the DBE, is because with the technical high schools, you choose your technical subjects in grade 10, from grade 10. But now, through the DBE, we've been introducing now for 2 or 3 years, the vocational orientated curriculum from grade 8 and 9, so that the learners get exposure to the technical subjects lower in the high school system. And we are driving that as a province. Currently, we have close to around 40 schools that are now introducing the VOC in grade 8 and 9. What we want to do, our intention, is to introduce it in the 113 schools. So eventually we would want all those schools to be full technical high schools. So when I said only 11 are full, it suggests the other 102 are comprehensive schools. So they offer a combination of academic and technical. We want to be able to get learners to choose more of the technical subjects. The technical vocational stream is where we need to be as a country and as a province. That's where our artisans, that's where we get artisans, highly skilled individuals from. But in GDE, in addition to that, and this we started a number of years ago, we also have, and again, it's just from expanding on what the MEC had indicated, through our reorganization of school strategy. That strategy is about changing the landscape of schooling in the province. It's a transformation strategy. And that's where we are implementing our schools of specialization. And even within the schools of specialization, you would know that we don't only focus, one of the disciplines is math, science, ICT, but the other 4 are engineering, sports, performing and creative arts, commerce, and entrepreneurship. So I'm trying to answer also the other question that said we only focus on STEM subjects. STEM is important, by the way. That's where we get our engineers from. So it's absolutely important. But together with in the ROS strategy, we also have our multi-certification skills program. It's a powerful program, and just to say, our SOS schools, we've got 38 now. Last term we launched 2, we're going to launch 6 in this financial year. So we have 38 currently. In our multi-certification program, the vision of that program, it's a powerful program. The vision says if your child enters grade R in 2027 in a GDE school, by the time they finish school 13 years later, they will have a matric certificate and 12 other skills-based certificates. And there are 3 buckets of skills that we certify them on, 1 for each of the grades. And I won't go into that detail. I suppose MEC will talk about that at a later stage. So I just wanted to respond to that. And then on the revision of the history curriculum, we participate as as the Provincial Department of Education in the structures as led by the DBE. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, it's out for public comment at the moment. Thank you so much, MEC.
Thank you, DGG.
Thank you very much, MEC, HOD, and DGGs. Colleagues, that brings us to the... Do you have more questions? Open to... Yes, the ones in the WhatsApp group, will respond to them. Okay. Can the MEC, this is Dima in the WhatsApp group, can the MEC clarify the issue of funding in quintile 5 schools? The previous MEC denied cutting funding by 65% because of budget cuts. Based on the question 1, based on the MEC's previous rule, by was funding to cut quintile schools and by how much? There's the issue of the grammar there. I'm asking because some schools insist their funding has been cut. What percentage of these schools specifically is funded from the new budget? If there are cuts, how does the department foresee the gap being serviced given parents in those schools are also faced with economic shocks? What is the arrangement for the bills in the municipalities? Are they paid by the department or they have to pay for themselves? There are questions. Democrats.
Is it Democrats? So is probably online. Eh? Yeah, Democrats is online. So she's probably online.
I know of that issue, but I think the acting HOD will deal with it, of the quintile 5 school funding. But what I know is one of the things, we have been overcompensating over years as Gauteng, and we have been trying to put more and more resources to schools. But now we are faced with a situation we have to continue to ensure the norms and standards are not compromised and all that, but we also have to be realistic. And that's why we're giving this picture. So the picture is important. We want to keep on referring you to the stage of education. You know, if you look at it, it's a good summary. So that's why we must also make it a booklet. It's a good summary. Everybody, I mean, as I'm sitting here, I'm receiving messages. Somebody saying there's a school overcrowded in Winterveld. I talked to you about Beauvais and all that. So This summary is very important about the state of education in Gauteng. We need to start there. So that every time, and perhaps we have to do it once a year, so that we say, last year, this is where we were. Are we moving or not moving? So that the society should hold us accountable. So that we say, we said we needed 20 classrooms. Now we need 15 or we need 18, you know. So it's something that we will talk about. So I'll give to the acting HOD on that. And then those two questions. And the payment of bills. There are schools whose bills to municipalities are paid by the raising taxes by us. Yes, the raising taxes is provincial government, and then the water and electricity is schools. But we want to look at how we can coordinate it better and take it from there. But it should respond on the quantiles where you have cut money.
Thanks. Let me just start with one omission from the last round. So grade R will be included in the admissions. Okay. So she had online, yes. It will be included now. So it's grade R, grade 1, and grade 8 will be online. Sure. Can we start with the issue of the quintiles? So the quintiles, maybe some quick technical story quickly. The quintiles are not necessarily quintiles in provinces. So we don't have 20% of learners in each quintile. It's a national quintile of 20. So in quintile 1, it's the poorest 20% in the country. But in Gauteng, we only get 11% in that category. So in quintile 2, it's also about 11, 12%. In quintile 3, it's about 20. So technically, it's under 45% that are in quintile 1, 2, and 3 that we declare as no-fee schools. And then quintile 4 and 5 have got the balance of the learners. That is determined nationally, and it's part of a gazette. But included in the gazette is the second part of subsidies. And that is an amount that is referred to in the gazette as an adequacy amount. And the adequacy amount is prescribed by the ministry to say, in quintile 1, 2, and 3, this is the minimum that you must pay the school. Then there's a minimum amount for quintile 4 and a minimum amount for quintile 5. All of that is prescribed in law. I think from the last report I saw, there are only 2 provinces, Gauteng and one other, that is complying with the minimum payments to each quintile. All the others are not complying in the way that they should. There are shortfalls. What we have is the following. We attempted at the time when the province had sufficient funding, we tried to compensate these schools in some way above the quintile amount. So the quintile amount, I think for this year, is about 315 rands in quintile 5. We were paying them the similar amount to quintile 4 at around 800. When the budget was cut, we were told you cannot do these additional things because they are not compliant with the statutory provision. You must bring your spending in line with what the law says, but do not break the law. So when we reduced, we didn't cut the budget, we reduced it to the prescribed adequacy amount of quintile 5. So all schools are getting the prescribed minimum subsidy per learner that is in the gazette. I don't have all the figures in my head right now, but it is in the public domain. And so those schools would have to move in that particular category. Because it's a no-fee school and the procedure that must be followed, we need to notify schools before September. that this is your projected subsidy from the department based on your current number of learners. The school must then go and determine what is its budget to operate in the next year. If it's got an amount, it must reduce it by the subsidy given by the state, and then the balance is what they must raise through fees, donor funding, voluntary contributions, fundraising. And that is the portion. So obviously, the first reaction of these schools is to go and increase the fee. And the guidance that went out with through districts and in meetings is that there is a problem that when you set your fee too high, you are giving the opportunity to too many parents to apply for exemptions. And the more exemptions you get, the less the revenue to the school. So you need to set the fee in such a fair way that it reduces the number of applications for exemptions. Now that is the basic mechanics around this thing. So we have not shortchanged any school. We have given them the minimum, and the minimum was to stay within the budget that we have. I know the MEC, when he was with the head of Treasury, or the MEC for Treasury, would always look at our presentations that said, we've got a shortfall of X number billion. And he would say, there's no money. And so, in terms of the PFMA, we cannot spend money that we don't have. In actual fact, it's a criminal offense. And so we have had to adjust a number of spending areas. We have cut in terms of some of our interventions. You will see that in the statement that the MEC released, you will see the challenges as a result of budget shortfalls. And this was just one other area. When it comes to the issue of municipal services, we also had been able to set aside about R500 million to bail out schools when they couldn't meet their municipal obligations. Even that R500 million fund has now returned to zero. So we have got a full-time team under the CFO whose job is to work with municipalities to make sure that the billing is fair. We don't understand how a school is paying 300,000 rands a month on water and lights. It just doesn't make sense. How does a school, we return a function to a school with a balanced account, they're now sitting 6 million rands in arrears. There is something wrong with the billing system. And because we are willing payers, we are the first one to get hit by municipalities. The other issue that we are trying to raise with the municipalities, there are schools, and I won't be surprised that this school could be one of them, that is not zoned as a social site. It is being treated as a business site. And when they are treated as a business site, all the charges are at a higher level. And so schools can't manage that. And I think we've put together a team to start getting that information so we can work with the municipalities to classify the sites correctly with a view to reducing the burden. There is a final factor in this thing, and we are going to raise it with the Department of Education. We don't believe that the adequacy amount has kept abreast with the inflation in schools, not CPIX, but the inflation in schools. Remember, schools use their subsidy for three main things: LTSM, municipal services, and minor repairs. And the inflation in those three categories is way above CPIX. And therefore, we think that the adequacy amount is now lagging behind and would require the national sphere to go and recalculate that particular amount in line with what the current pressures in schools are. Thanks.
Thank you, HOD. We'll check if there's any follow-up questions. Going once, going twice, gone. Thank you, colleagues. We would like to appreciate you for having responded to our invite. That brings us to the end of our press briefing. We will be available to take interviews. Thank you.